Hello everyone and welcome to the Eden Gathering podcast. We are so glad to have you with us yet again, whether you're listening in the car or in the bath, which I always find a bit strange that people will listen in the bath. We're grateful for your presence all the same. I hope you're having a great summer. It's been really, really warm. Well, at the time of recording, it's sweltering. I have with me a very special guest. Say hello.
Hello.
Hello. And your name is?
So I'm Dave Courteen.
Yeah, I didn't want... So I was going to introduce you as David, and then I was like, can I call him Dave? I don't really know.
Do you know, only my mum calls me David.
Maybe
and usually when I've done something wrong. So I'd have kind of had a shiver if you'd have called me David.
I might do that if it makes you know. No, that's really cool. And mate, we're so grateful to have you here because you've just come off a long drive.
Yeah, no, I've headed back from Shrewsbury, so I've been seeing lots of cars on the A14. But no, it's great to be here and chatting away with you guys too. So thank you for inviting me.
So just for a bit of context, me and Dave, well, this will be the first time we've ever properly spoken, really, won't it? Be really, other than you just tweeted me to say you were going to be late. And we've had little passing words, but we've never sat down over coffee or anything.
No, absolutely.
It's actually quite rude that you haven't invited me out for coffee or
well,
anything.
you know, kind of could say the same thing back as well,
yeah,
I guess.
Yeah, okay.
You know,
no, let's call it quits. This is okay. Nice anyway.
We've done it now with a couple of microphones and a fan and a glass of water.
So the fan is back. If you were, there might be a slight whirring in the distance because this fan, we're in the middle of a heat wave, so just bear with us on that. But I'm sure Alex will be able to edit it out. He has to edit these podcasts quite heavily sometimes anyway, so a little bit of fan noise won't bother anyone. So as you're getting to know Dave through this podcast, I'm also getting to know Dave through this podcast. So I've already learned that his mother calls him David.
But only when I do things wrong.
But only when you do things wrong. So I'm just going to stick with Dave, if that's okay.
That'd be cool.
I'm Ben.
Not Benjamin.
No, I'm not Benjamin. My mum doesn't even call me Benjamin. So I've been really, really naughty. That would be like a grandparent telling me and then there would be some sort of spanking. No, you can't say that on a podcast. I don't want anyone to call Childline. It really is okay. Anyway, moving swiftly on. Dave, tell me a bit about yourself. What do you do?
So my day job is that I run health clubs and day spas in hotels and in standalone clubs across the country. So part of a company called Mosaic, and we have around 35 sites around the country that we operate, and we employ around 550 staff. So my job, I'm very fortunate, gets to take me to kind of visit those sites and to find some new ones and to help develop the teams that we've got within those sites. And I particularly focus on a couple of our clubs and contracts that I particularly look after, one of which is in Shrewsbury, which is a wonderful club. But
which is where you've just driven back.
And where I've just driven from, but just unfortunately a bit too far away from Suffolk ideally, but hey, there we go. So
they're kind of centred around Suffolk, or is it all over the UK?
No, it is all over the UK. So we've got sites up in Glasgow, down in Dartmouth, and crossing Cardiff. So
so you're really spread out.
So we are pretty much spread around the UK.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure that I heard you started this fresh out of uni.
Yeah, basically.
Go on, tell me about that.
So basically, I kind of fancied having a go at running my own business and decided that if I was going to do that, it would be a good idea to start when I'm straight out of uni. I've got no real commitments, and I've got the chance that if it all goes wrong, that actually I can still recover and build. So
you're a single guy out of uni?
Yeah, straight out of uni, and I met a guy that I was really good mates with, and we got on really well, and he had a similar sort of vision. So we sat down one day and decided that once we'd finished our courses, that maybe we'd look to set up our own business. And at that time, which was in the late 80s, we just recognised that there were a lot of hotels that were building health clubs. We'd both done degrees that were around business studies, but in the context of leisure and recreation. Yeah. And so we saw a bit of an opportunity to go in.
I'll have to go at this.
Yeah, exactly. And so we started with one site, one other member of staff other than ourselves, and off we went. And 31 years later, we've still survived. So I think it's too late now. It's too late now to have another career.
And you still got the same business partner?
Yeah, pretty much. So we've been through a few different structures. So we sold the business, we bought it back, we bought some additional investors. So we've been through some different chapters in our story, if you like, but principally myself and Steve Taylor, who set the business up. Yeah, we're still
through
still
highs and
involved in the
lows, or
business.
I mean, like when you say like you started out of uni and now you employ like 550 people, that kind of to me seems like if it was on a graph, it would just have like a really high point and a really low point from when you started. But I imagine from what you've just said, there's kind of been some highs and some lows. And
yeah, absolutely. No, there's been some really challenging times. There's been times when, you know, the future of the business has been called into question. We've had some real battles on our hand. We've been through some interesting experiences under different ownership structures. But we've still sort of survived to the tale. But no, you're absolutely right, Ben. I mean, it's been more of a roller coaster than a straight line graph. And interestingly, I think, you know, we had to grow with the business. So we were completely wet behind the ears. You know, we were in our very early 20s, and we'd never done business before. We were straight out of school and then at uni, and I had another job before, but while I was at uni, but that was it. So we were really we really had to learn and grow as the business grew. And
I find that so inspiring. Honestly, I do find it so inspiring. And what? So I'm just trying to think of you just coming out of uni. Christian?
No, actually, no.
I
didn't.
Talk to me about how you became a Christian. Or...
So I suppose the answer to that would be that I've always had an inquiring mind. I grew up next door to a church. We lived next door to a church in London, and so my initial impression of church and people at church is that our garden ran alongside the church car park, and these people would go to church. They'd go to the service. They'd come out. They'd then reverse back a bit too far. They'd smash into our garden fence and break it, and then my mum or dad would go around and challenge them about it, and they'd deny flatly they'd done it. And so I always had this kind of impression.
Perfect. That's the church. Brilliant.
Of kind of, so for me, that's my first impression of church.
Just help me visualize it. Are we talking like, what sort of church are we talking about? Like big, like kind of spirey sort of?
We're talking a modern building, but a traditional Church of England, quite a high church.
Yeah.
So that was my first impression. But I've always had an inquiring mind. I'd always be interested in faith-based programs on the TV, but never really bothered exploring it any further. And
no Christians in the family or anything like that?
No. My mum, if anything, would have quite a different background, so had some real sense of faith and belief, but had really got family was very much into Christian Science, which is pretty away from quite different to the Christian faith that I now know and would have. That was that really, and I first sort of became into faith through doing an Alpha course when I was in my early 30s,
So a friend invited you, or?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Friend invited, decided to go along. Quite intrigued by it. Take a bit of persuading, so actually I had to do two Alpha courses. But yeah, that was my faith journey really. At the end of the second Alpha course, I felt ready to make that statement of faith and embrace that in everything that I did in my life in the best way that I could.
Yeah, and how have you held your faith? And so it sounds like, so you started the business, and this is kind of like 10 years into your business that you become a Christian, if I'm getting my timeline right?
Pretty much.
And did the business change? How did your faith impacted you as a person? How did that impact how you grew your business? Yeah. How kind of big were you in 10 years in?
So at that time, we would have been around 12 sites, and therefore probably about 60 or 70 staff.
What am I doing with my life? So, I just need to go out and start a business, because I'm sure it's really easy, right?
Well, I think starting a business. So the first thing is we got fortunate in getting our first site. So that for us, we'd seen this opportunity against the hotel industry and running health clubs for them. And I think you need there is an element of, if you work hard, you will, I think, make your own luck. I think that's a bit of a glib cliche, but I think there is some real truth behind that. But I think that if you, we found the first site. That was the first critical step along the way. There are certain things that are going to make the business succeed, I think, and it's impossible to say, there are 5 golden rules or 10 golden rules, or if you do this, you will definitely have a successful business. But there are certain things that you need to be able to, I think, establish if you're gonna set up and run your own business. And the first one is you need a bit of a breakthrough moment.
Yeah.
And so for us, having the first site was the breakthrough moment that gave us a base about which we could build this business. Yeah. Secondly, is that you need to, I think, what we were able to do is identify what it was that we were doing in the business, and we identified that we were going to be health clubs that focused on being friendly. So a lot of people in that health clubs were fairly new. It was a fairly new concept in the late 80s. So people weren't really sure how to use them. And so we decided that we wanted to just wow people with our friendliness. So we focused on training the people that we got. And when Steve and I worked in them ourselves, that we just focused on that friendly service. So we were very clear about what our vision was and what it was that we were trying to do. And I think if you're clear, if your vision is clear and you're focused on what you're able to do, and you can kind of execute that vision, and that is something that your consumers or your customers buy into, then you are kind of onto something. And we were fortunate that by looking after people, making their exercise as fun as it could be, that we were quite successful with the first site that we got. And our other breakthrough moment was that then the hotel that we happened to be based in, the MD of that hotel became the MD of a group of a chain of hotels. Yeah. And so he then started advocating the work that we were doing, and we went from we had one site.
Turned into your sales rep.
Yeah. We went from one site in the first 4 or 5 years to then having 5 sites. And I think you need your breakthrough moment, you need to understand what your vision is and be clear on that, and then you need to make sure you deliver on it. And then the fourth thing is you need to also recognize when you've got to a point where you need to pause. So businesses are just like anything. You go through growth spurts, and then you need to learn to understand what that means from that and cope with that growth. So we went from having one site to having 5 sites in the space of about 4 or 5 months. And then Steve and I decided at that point, we just need to pause, because actually running one site is really simple compared to running 5 sites, because suddenly, we've got different locations, we've got different people there, we can't be there the majority of the time. And we had to learn about what that was like to actually work on a multi-site location. And it took us about 3 or 4 years to learn that. And then we were ready to grow again. And then we went to sort of 9 sites. And we'd always operated with a very friendly approach to our managers, and kind of they were the same age as us. And so we kind of worked together and played hard together. And our management style was very much, if there was an issue, we sat down with a kind of a pie and a pint and sorted them out. Yeah. The problem is when you get to 9 sites, you're drinking an awful lot of beer and an awful lot of pies. So, which in the healthcare industry is not a very good thing. So again, we had to grow and adapt and learn. So I think that brings us up to the point where I became a Christian. Was that we got 9 or 10 sites, we got 50 or 60 staff, we got a group of managers, and I think that what I realised is that the biggest thing for me in relation to work with my faith was that a lot of the people that were coming to our health clubs were looking for something that was missing in their lives, and they were recognizing that they weren't happy with who they were, and they were trying to change who they were through exercise. And sure, it made them healthier, but there was still
is that like an obsession based thing, or do you think some
occasionally it was, but I think just people were like recognizing they weren't quite the person that they wanted to be, and so they hoped through exercise they could change that, and they could partly. And actually, I think body shape and body appearance is quite important. But actually, what I realised from coming to faith was actually what a lot of these people were searching for was they were trying to fill a God-shaped hole.
Interesting.
And so having come to faith through Alpha Course, what I then looked to do is to say, well, how could we could we take Alpha into health clubs? So rather than have churches running Alpha courses, could we have health clubs that were running Alpha courses, and bring some of that, of the spiritual side, into what we were doing? And so that became one of the first things when I came to faith.
That's really interesting. That's so good. And you pulled that off.
I did it in a slightly different way to what I expected to do. So a lot of our clubs are quite small because they're in hotels. So we have between sort of 500 to 1,000 members. So initially, I suppose to tell the story, I came to faith, and we were also at a point where we were potentially going through a change in the business, and we were looking at being acquired as a business. And
sorry, I don't know what that means.
So somebody was we'd been approached at that stage in the we're now sort of in the late 1990s, just coming to the turn of the century, and health club industry at that time was at its most buoyant. The values of businesses were at their highest. Everybody that was investing was looking to get into health club industry because it was seen as a sexy young industry that people wanted to invest in. And so we had a number of approaches for people to buy us. And so we were contemplating 12, 14 years into running our business whether we should cash in at that point. Without boring with the story, but basically we partnered up with a PLC who basically acquired us.
Sorry, I don't know what PLC is. Sorry.
PLC is a public limited company, so it's not one that's privately owned. So Steve and I owned our business, so that would be a private company. It'd be a limited company. And a PLC is one that you can buy their stocks and shares on the stock exchange. So that's a PLC.
Sorry, I'm business zero.
It's fine. It's great. No, it's good. It's good to have those questions. So we were bought by this PLC, obviously significantly larger than we were, and I'd just come to faith, and I remember that we had two things to do really. The first day we had to get the key staff together and the managers and tell them what had happened and explain to them. Secondly, we had to go and tell our clients. And then it was Easter, and I was going to have a bit of a break, and I was going to spring harvest.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember praying that God would help me to understand what I needed to do. Now we were going through this massive change in our organisation. Instead of being just a business that Steve and I owned and controlled, we were now part of a much bigger organisation with more responsibilities, but also people that we were reporting into. And I've been travelling around the country telling our clients, then I had to drive all the way down to Minehead for Spring Harvest.
So Spring Harvest is a conference, isn't it? It's like a gathering of different churches all over the place and come together at Easter. It's Easter time, isn't it? And it's quite a few thousand people there.
That's
and it's
right.
kind of like a church-wide thing, in case you didn't know, because it's not as popular as it used to be.
No,
controversially. I was just going to put it out there.
There's probably about, it was held at Butlins, and there must have been about 3,000 or 4,000 people when I went in at that point in time.
Adults, probably.
Predominantly, yeah. And so we arrived. It was late, and there was a thing on called Question of Sport in one of the kind of the tents. Yeah. And so I just
not
went
Sue
along,
Barker.
having not Sue Barker.
She was there, man.
It was a different style. It was a Christian focused Spring Harvest Questions of Sport, and there was somebody there, and they were just talking to them about what they did, and she said, "Well, we run Alpha courses in health clubs," and
wow.
And it felt like
so you've gone there like praying, and gosh, that's the first thing.
It's a wonderful thing when literally, and it was one of those things. We got there about 11 o'clock at night. Right, do we go to bed or do we just try and long journey? Let's go and chill out. Let's just see what this Questions of Sport thing is all about. Run by Christians in Sport, which is quite a well-known organisation that helps and supports people who are have a faith and play sport, and tries to use sport as a way to reach out to people too. So I went and what transpired from there is that I went to talk to the girl that had said she worked for this organisation, which transpired to be called Fit Lives, and I just felt that very clearly that was an answer to prayer. That was too amazing a coincidence for that not to be God inspired. And so that's led to, from that day on really, an involvement in Fit Lives, which has been about that, going into health clubs, not necessarily my own, but going into other health clubs and running Alpha courses and providing people to just provide pastoral support to people that go into health clubs and helping them, and in a very just basically helping them to do life. That's what kind of Fit Lives would be about. It's evolved into an organisation that's now part of the sports chaplaincy. Yeah. So we almost call them. I
was going to say gym, it sounds
it's a bit like a gym chaplaincy, yeah. And it's living out your faith through helping people. And again, with my background, having been in health clubs, it's a bit like. The best analogy I can give is a bit like the hairdresser's analogy, where a hairdresser sits somebody in the chair, they cut their hair, they do whatever they need to do, and that person just spills out what's going on in their life because it's someone to talk to and it's a captive audience because they've got to stay there to do your hair. And to a certain extent, in health clubs, because of the relationship with an instructor and they're helping you, advising you with your exercise program, there is an element where people tend to, because you're solving one particular problem for them in terms of helping them with their exercise, they bring their other non-exercise related problems to talk to you about. And as fitness instructors, we're not very well qualified to answer those. So what Fit Lives tries to do is bring people there that can just get alongside those people and sit and talk to them. Yeah. So yes, we have done some stuff through some of the clubs that I've been involved with directly through my own company. But actually, my faith in terms of within health clubs has been more worked through in my association with Fit Lives and the way I've sort of supported that.
And I think, I was just trying to imagine what it'd be like. Is it Steve, your business partner's name? And were you married? Did you have?
Yeah,
were you in a relationship at the time you became a Christian? Or?
Yeah, I was. Yeah,
and you're married.
I was.
And they were a Christian. She was a Christian.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. But I'm just thinking, Steve's not a Christian?
No.
I'm just wondering what it'd be like if someone came up to me. It's like, by the way, I'm a Christian. I want to run this thing called an alpha course across our business. I'd been like,
yeah.
How did you negotiate like that? Or was he just supportive?
So I think Steve found, I think my sort of coming to faith was not a, road to Damascus kind of sudden change kind of experience. It evolved over a period of time, and he was aware of that evolvement. And obviously he, as well as being my business partner, he was also my best mate. So, we'd talk about lots of things.
Oh, that's cute.
He never really wanted to get too, he never really wanted to get too involved in talking about it. And I think to a certain extent, there was one thing that happened actually. Again, this is amazing how God works, isn't it? So Steve and so we were both married at the time, but not to the women that we are now married to. Okay. For both of us, just to kind of put that one out there. And so Steve had been, and his then wife had been struggling to have a child, and then had a miscarriage. And one of my coming to faith moments was where I asked God to clearly speak to me if he was out there, and sat there. And I had this moment where overwhelmingly I had this come into my head that I had to go to Steve and tell him that not to worry, that him and Kim would have a child.
Wow, that is and
it was tough. Just, I can't really explain it other than it was overpowering.
Yeah. And but that's not an easy thing. Can you prove it in another way, please?
Yes, exactly. give me another one.
Yeah.
But but I did what I felt I was called to do. So I went back and spoke to him, and he said, "Well, I was going to tell you in a couple of weeks, but Kim's actually pregnant." And
serious, wow.
Yeah. And so Lucy was born, and she's now, my goddaughter, and she's now just finished at university. So so for Steve, that definitely kind of freaked him out a little bit. I think in terms of that's really bizarre.
Yeah.
So I think Steve.
So that made you look more or less insane.
Probably more. He was more uncomfortable. He was more unnerved by it.
Really,
right? I think from his perspective, that pushed him further away than brought him closer together, closer to having a faith. Without telling his story too much, but I think
sure.
From what happened was that he then go forward a few years, and Steve then went through a very difficult and, from his perspective, very painful divorce, and I helped him through that. And one of the ways we helped him through that was he went to Christian centre that helps people when they're having a really difficult time. Yeah. And I think he would be, I'm really talked to him at length about where he's at with his faith, but I think he would definitely be closer to God. He's come to the Forge quite a few times.
Oh, cool.
He would be closer now than I think he probably has a faith. It's not something we talk about hugely, but he has come over time to faith. But we've kind of sidetracked from your question, which was how did I get the Fit Lives thing past him early on?
It's just like I think you would have come looking like a right loony, but
I think when I explained the reason behind it, and I think he'd seen the impact it had on me, and I think we both one of the things you've got to do if you're going to work together in business, you've got to completely trust each other.
Yeah.
So true. I was able to kind of say to him that you just need to trust me in this one. It's not going to be weird. It's not going to be odd. It's just, and I think it helps some of our members. And he was like, well, okay, give it a go and we'll see what happens. And rest assured, if we get any grief about it, we're pulling it straight away. Yeah. So that was kind of way it worked. And but predominantly Fit Lives was done away from our own clubs, and certainly now actually it's done completely away from any of our own clubs.
It's interesting, and it's just interesting to hear how you negotiate relationships through business, whether that be, well, obviously you just mentioned about your divorce, or with a business partner. How has your faith helped? Or, I mean, if you're comfortable talking about kind of divorce, I don't know. Yeah. I
think it provides you with something to cling on to. So I think when you go through difficult times, so we talk about with the business, I mean, one of the challenging things was when we were bought out by the PLC, without, again, going through a huge amount of detail that's a bit confusing, but effectively the way that we were bought was partly with cash, but partly with shares in the company. And the way that those companies work is that your value of a PLC, particularly young PLCs, is based upon not too many shares coming to the market. If lots of people are trying to sell shares, it's about the old rule of supply and demand, then the share price will drop. So one of the things that we had was what's called a lock-in, which means we've got all these shares, but we can't sell them for a period of time. So I got all these shares in this PLC, but I had to hold them for 3 years. And in that time, the price dropped by 90%. So effectively, I lost 90% of the value of the business that I sold and spent all that time building up with.
So that's a low.
It was pretty painful.
Yeah,
pretty hard, because you think you're in one position and you're in a totally different one. So I think what happens there with your faith is that you've just got to you have to trust God, and you've got to kind of I used my faith as a way of just controlling my emotions, of gaining hope in what was feeling like. It just felt like everything was dribbling through my hands in a way, and I got no control over it. I had no control over it. So that, but you've just got to hang on in there. And I think with my divorce too, that I would say exactly the same thing. That actually, I mean, the one thing around my faith was I remember feeling really strongly, although it was quite a difficult and awkward breakdown of the relationship, was that I had to pray for my ex-wife. And so that's what I felt I needed to do. Yeah. However hard that might be, depending upon what the behaviours were and what was actually going on. And so, and to a certain element, it was like that whole thing of feeling like a failure, because like I'm a Christian, right? So, and she was a Christian, or she is a Christian, sorry. And we shouldn't therefore fail at marriage. Yeah. And that was a really hard thing for me to get my head around.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you sharing, because a lot of the guests that we have on maybe won't have been through divorce, but probably half the people that are listening to this will have had some sort of experience with divorce. So thank you so much for sharing it and not making it such a taboo. Is taboo the right word? I don't know. Subject. So yeah, thank you so much. You then, let's kind of bring this to millennials and say, you employ 550 people And how do you know how many are kind of millennials? And
and that's the problem really for me in terms of, I suppose, the way that, and when I talked earlier on about how we've got to evolve and grow and learn with the business, is that when we started out, everybody that we employed was the same age as Steve and I, and so the way that we related to them was totally different, and the age of our employees has pretty much stayed the same. It's always been in their job, because it's a health club environment or a day spa environment. It tends to be people that are in their 20s. And that stayed the same throughout the business. The problem is that, unfortunately, we're not Peter Pans of the fitness industry or health or spa industry, and so we've got older. So now there is a very different age gap. But you've got around 80% of the people that we employ are under the age of 30.
And what's it like being a boss to millennials? What do you wish millennials were more like? What do you love about millennials? Like, I'm just thinking, like, anyone could be listening to this, like a millennial that can't figure out how to get a job, because we don't get taught stuff like that in school. Yeah. What would you be looking for? What are your kind of highs and lows of working with?
Okay, I think the you end up having to generalise here, don't you? Because
of course, yeah.
So I mean, I think in general terms, what's happened over time is that partly through the way that the politics and the way that that people have grown up, and the way the world has evolved, and digital and all those things that have happened, is that people generally are very much more concerned with themselves, and there is a sense of entitlement. And I think, therefore, what we look for is, when we're looking for people, because we are a customer-led, customer-focused business that's got to give service, is we're looking for people that enjoy looking after others. And so that's what is the passion that we're trying to find. We've always, as a business, said that we're gonna try and recruit people at the more junior level. We're gonna invest in them with their training, and we're always going to try and promote from within. Mm-hmm. So that means we tend, and we can demonstrate largely. It doesn't always work. We can demonstrate largely that we do deliver on that. So we've got a lot of people that have grown with us. So out of our 35 managers, 31 of them have been promoted from within our organisation. Only 4 have come in at a manager level. So I suppose what we are looking for in people coming in is that they have a heart for wanting to go and deliver service, because that's what our business is all about. So, and therefore there is a sense of wanting to look after people and put those people first, rather than think about, this is actually what I want. So I suppose that's kind of looking at how but that would be different to how people were when we were recruiting 20 to 30 years ago. On the positive side, I think that millennials come with a huge amount of passion and determination, and kind of a bit more self kind of promotion, or wants a self-worth. I suppose what I'm trying to say, that there is a degree of confidence in terms of communication that comes there now, because there is so many more communication channels that have opened up with social media and all that kind of stuff. So I think I think through every era there is some change in the way that people behave, but actually it always is the same. It comes down to, if you work hard and you help the company deliver its vision, do you know what? You're gonna really progress and do well. And if you come in and think, how much am I gonna get out of this? That's probably going to be a different type of relationship.
Well, and it's good to see that the people that have just worked hard, they seem to be been rewarded by promotion. So it's obviously like, you're aware of the people, you're obviously in touch with people, and, reward them for working hard, which is also something that I think we can lose track of, is that, especially maybe in a large organisation like yours, where it might just feel like we're a number in a system, but it's like you're saying, no, like 31, I think you said, of these people used to be juniors, and now they're our managers, and that's how we want to run our business. So come work hard for me.
Yeah, I think certainly that because, and I think the use of case studies is really powerful, isn't it? In terms of people being able to understand and see that other people, it's easy to talk about. This is what we try to achieve. I've always think we as a business and me individually have always tried to, if you make statements, I want to try to be able to demonstrate that I can actually prove that is true. Talk is cheap, but it's really important to actually make sure that you can live out what it is that you say that you're.
Well, and you said like one of the first things that you said was like cast a vision, then go for it.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you've done that so well.
I think that works, but I think that works on a personal level as well. So I think individually, whether they be millennials or any age, it's about what can you, what's your vision? What is it you want to do? And go after it and make it happen.
So would that be your encouragement to the millennial generation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think
find out what you want to do.
Find out what your passion is. Try a number of different things, and focus on what you're giving to the organisation as well as what the organisation is giving to you. So I think it's really important that you find an organisation that fits well with what it is that you're trying to achieve. Because if you buy into the values of the organisation that you work for, you're just going to enjoy your job so much more. And that's really important. It doesn't, no matter, our industry, the health club industry, is traditionally poorly paid at whatever level, actually, from the most junior to the most senior. If you looked at leaders of organisations in the health club industry compared to, more traditional, bigger industries, the levels of pay would be far lower. And it would be the same at the kind of the coalface as well. So I think when you go into a job, it's not just about the money. Sure, money is really important. Yeah, that's a part of why we go to work. But actually, if you just go to work for the money, you are always going to end up, I think, slightly frustrated with work. If you go somewhere where you enjoy the vision and values that you're trying to deliver, then actually work becomes enjoyable, and we're going to spend at least 40 hours a week there, if not more. So actually, let's find something that we're passionate about. And I think that's really important.
I absolutely, completely agree with you. But I speak to a lot of people, too many people, that are sitting on their bottoms because they're waiting for that thing that sets them on fire. And actually, my advice is the opposite. So just tell you a bit of my story. I dropped out of college, got the first job I could, and that was shipping containers from port to port. I worked my way through a few different elements of that job, and that was just when social media started being a real thing, like an actual job. And then I was like, well, obviously I quite like sitting on Facebook and making that work for my company. So I then headed into the marketing thing, which then I landed a job doing social media, building social media for the largest anti-slavery organisation in the world, which was like an awesome job. And that's where I was. I split that part-time with church work before I came to the Forge. And I was like, so my encouragement to people is like, just go out and get a job. Like, if you don't know what it is, work. And in the work, you'll find out what it is. Would you think that my advice is completely invalid? And if so, that's totally fine. But do you know what I mean? There seems to be this attitude of like waiting for their dream job, when actually I just think a lot of people just need to work.
I completely agree. And I was going to say, I actually don't think what you've said, you've just repositioned in a slightly different way. But we're saying the same sort of thing, if I'm honest. I mean, what we're both saying is, go out, find a job, which is what you're saying. Yeah. Don't wait for the perfect job to come along. I would completely concur with that as well. Go out there, find a job, work out whether that's what your passion is or not. And over time, it will become apparent, and you've been attracted to and you've worked towards areas which you've found passionate about. So first of all, it was social media, and then it was kind of developing that with an anti-slavery situation, and involving that with church. So you've kind of orientated through your work life, and the jobs you've taken have got you closer and closer towards what your personal vision is.
Yeah, I mean, like then I did kind of like a U-turn, but like now I'm just do music. But that's also great. That was actually my original passion. Yeah. So, I mean, I'd
music and podcasts.
Podcasts. But there'll be music in the podcast, I hope. At the end, there's always music.
So I think, I think that's really important. That actually,
maybe I'm just too harsh.
The point you make is that yes, you need to go out and get a job. Clearly that's really important because that's what pays the bills and that's what kind of gives us a reason to get up in the morning. But don't lose sight of your personal vision and try to gravitate towards that wherever you can.
That's really good.
And whatever you do, one of the things that we try to project in our organisation is making sure that we look out for and do the best we can. So we have this saying that good enough is not good enough. So if you just do something and you think, oh, that'll be all right, that's good enough, then generally it isn't actually because we've not given it our best. And so I think that whether that applies corporately, I think that applies individually as well to whatever we do. So if the job's just it's good enough, it'll do for now. That's fair enough, but actually look for something else. Look for where else you could, how you could evolve that role and how you could evolve that job to make it more suitable to you. Because anybody, I mean, I love it when people come to me within the teams with ideas or suggestions, and some of the best ideas and suggestions that we've got have been developed by our team. So in our spas, some of the best treatments, some of the most popular treatments with our guests have been designed by some of our therapists, and I love that. That's fantastic that they've thought about what they're passionate about is they enjoy delivering treatments, and they've thought about it, and they come to say, I've got this great idea, we could just tweak this treatment in this way or that way. This is my idea for it, and we've incorporated it within what we do. So and those therapists therefore tend to be the ones that go on and develop. So I think it's and get the better roles. So I think whatever you're doing, it's about trying to find out what it is that you're aligned to and giving it your best shot, even if what you feel you're doing might be seen by others or even by you as fairly mundane. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I always remember I was going to the kitchen. There was a new member of staff in the kitchen this morning at Shrewsbury, and I'd gone through the bar area, so I pick up the plates because why not? Why shouldn't I? Just because I'm in a senior position, there's plates that need clearing on the table. I'm perfectly capable of picking them up and carrying them through. I'm not trying to make a point. I'm just
not passive aggressive plate clearing.
And the girl in the kitchen went, "You're not supposed to do that." And I went, "Why not? We all do that." I said, "Oh, I want you to do that. Why shouldn't I do that?" And I think that's I think you've got to do everything you can, the best you possibly can.
Would you say that your way of running a business is countercultural, or do you think there's a lot of good guys trying to give people of our age group, well, probably a bit younger than me, a chance?
I don't think...
It feels like hard work for millennials to get the sort of work that you're saying, I feel.
I guess...
Is it our fault or your fault?
I think probably... I think it's probably more the fault of my generation than it is of millennials. But I think
great, I agree. Cool, that's the end.
But I think there is probably. But I think that's. So what does that mean for millennials? Does that mean then you give up and blame the older generation for making things more difficult for you, or do you try and go out and change the way it is? And I think my approach in life, whenever there are things that have gone wrong for me, so we became part of a PLC, we were really excited by that. I was really excited by that. I thought I'd learn loads. It was one of the biggest mistakes we made. It cost me a huge amount in terms of money and everything else, but I decided that what was I going to do? I was either going to passively stay there and allow that to impact on me.
Yeah.
Or alternatively, I was going to go out and change it. And the only way that I could change it was to try and buy my business back. And so, 3 years after we sold out to the PLC, and with me making the famous statement, whatever I do, I'm never buying this business back. We bought the business back.
Famous last words.
And that was 13, 14 years ago, actually. Yeah. And here I am. So still with that same business. So yeah, I think it is. There are challenging work conditions. There are all sorts of things out there. There are real issues for people at the moment. 0 hours contracts. Minimal commitment from employers towards employees. Those are real challenges. But you've got to go out there and work with what you've got and try and impact change where you can.
It's good. I wish you were my boss. No, I love
I've heard
my
you've
boss.
got a good boss.
It's Mr. Duncan Banks. Duncan, we love you. I really like you being my boss. So what else do you get up to, Dave? You got kids?
Yeah, so I've got two. I've got Rose and Millie. Rose has just started high school, and Millie's now got one more year before she makes that transition as well. And Miranda is my wife, and she's involved in Next Steps at the Forge, and that's what we do. That's
cool. I'd love to maybe another time, because time's getting on, but I'd love to hear the challenges of being a dad and handling a business. But I hear that you must get some downtime. You're into your tennis or something, aren't you?
Yeah. So I play a bit of tennis, and I think the dad thing is really important, that you create space to make sure that you do some stuff with them. So it is difficult, and particularly this day and age where emails are constantly on and that. So that's really hard. You're absolutely right. I try and make sure that generally the weekends are family time, and then the week is work. So that's generally my. Other
than when you're down
rule.
Portman Road,
yeah. That's. But you see, Millie's coming with me. She's got a season ticket as well now.
That's so good.
So we have some time doing that. But I play a bit of tennis, and I do a bit of writing when I get time as well. I really enjoy that.
I had on my notes ask about the books. So what about the books then?
So
the books about tennis?
Well, the next one probably is. Next one, I'm writing one at the moment, which is the second one, which is about the lessons that we can learn for life from playing sport, but particularly tennis. You're
saying we should all be swingers? That was a terrible joke.
Well, no, it's more about the fact that life's a racket. So there you go.
Oh, well, we should all serve.
Very good. That's your advantage now.
When you were doing research, did you do a baseline study?
Well, but I'm hoping to net quite a bit of money.
Oh.
How many more puns can we go? Yeah, it's too good.
How many more can we get in?
Yeah, exactly. It's too good to hurry, I mean, sorry. So.
Alex, you better be umpiring these.
He's going to rule us out.
Oh, dear. Stop.
Anyway, we'll call that quits. Love all. That's what that book is about.
I don't even know what we were talking about.
No, we got completely sidetracked. So let's bring it down to being more serious. Yeah. So the first book was a blog that became a book, and Miranda was diagnosed with advanced breast cancer.
Oh, wow.
And so I wrote one of my ways of dealing with it, and one of the ways to help keep people informed of what was happening was that I wrote a blog that updated people and just told our story as she battled breast cancer. And it was a blog, and it ended up with loads and loads of people following it. And then Breakthrough Breast Cancer said, we've got no materials around how blokes deal with wives. I
was going to say that's quite a unique.
Yeah, it's quite unique. So it's not uncommon.
Well, not a unique experience. Unfortunately, but no one's talking about it.
It's quite usual for people to write a blog when they are going through cancer themselves. That's become more and more of a thing, and there are plenty of books written by women about it, but not very many by men. So we've turned that into a resource, and we use that as well as some. We did a ball and to raise some funds, and so out of that, we've raised just over 22,000 now for breakthrough breast cancer.
Amazing.
And also for Ipswich Hospital. We called it The Last Chocolate Brownie. So the whole thing became The Last Chocolate Brownie. That was from the scene in the film Notting Hill where they all sit round and tell there's one chocolate brownie left, and they all have to tell a hard luck story to decide who's gonna get the last chocolate brownie. So Miranda came up with the idea. She said, "Why don't we call it The Last Chocolate Brownie? It's our bid to win that."
That must have been such a vulnerable. Well, gosh, I can't even imagine what it'd be like to. How detailed were you? Were you kind of bearing it all on there, or was it more informative, or was this just you processing it and just whatever came out? Or
yeah, a bit of that.
I should have read it. That's bad research.
Don't worry, no, don't worry. So I think we were pretty honest. I mean, Miranda wrote a few chapters. I wrote the vast majority of it, but she wrote a bit. I think it was a way of processing what we were going through. So I tried to tackle the difficult subjects. So Rose was 5 and Millie was 2 at the time, and so it was about how do you manage the kids? How do you tell the kids? How do you tell them when they're that age? What do you tell them? How much do you disclose? How do we cope with the business and with all else what's going on as well? We just tried to be honest and real, but I also tried, we tried to find the humour in it as well, and so I tried to just tell the story of how we were trying to get through that process, really.
I think it's so good, and there's obviously such a need for it because it's more high profile, I guess. But this Simon Thomas guy, he shared that's what made me think of it. Is that's really similar to what Simon Thomas he's kind of just doing it through different kind of Twitter and social media, but that's struck a nerve with so many people, isn't it? He's just a dad that, unfortunately, he's a Sky News presenter, or actually my age group will know him, Simon from Blue Peter.
Yes.
But he lost his wife to a type of cancer, wasn't it?
He did,
and is now left with his young boy, and he's kind of just documenting the hardships of that. Gosh, it's just absolutely heartbreaking. Yeah,
my story, fortunately, is obviously Miranda has come through it, and we're 6-7 years on, and she's still around. So that's a positive story. Often in these cases it isn't the case. He's really picked the story up, hasn't he? Because his situation was horrendous because she was diagnosed.
It was really
literally diagnosed on the Friday and died on the Sunday.
But again, he's a Christian, isn't he, as well?
He is, and he's talked about that aspect of his faith, and there's been some pretty powerful stuff, and I think that is one of the, we've talked a bit about millennials and we've talked a bit about social media, and there's many downsides of social media, but there's some real upsides. Definitely. Because you can draw strength from, so many messages, and it was incredible actually when I was doing mine and blogging, the number of messages and positive comments that you're getting, and it really helps. I mean, it really helps. And the one thing Miranda said to me on the day that she was diagnosed and we were driving home from the hospital, I said, right, if there's one thing you want me to do to help you, what's the one thing? I said, there'll be loads of things, but what's the one thing? And she said, I don't want to do chemo on my own. I want you to be with me when I do chemo. And that's a day-long process. And so it all started really. She was diagnosed just before Christmas, and because they wanted to get it started really quickly because it was quite advanced. Yeah. The only slot they had was Christmas Eve. It's because no one wanted to have chemo on Christmas Eve, so they could fit her in then. So I'm thinking, I'm going to sit in hospital all day on Christmas Eve. What am I going to do? Because you just literally sit there. So that's where the blog came from. And actually, but then we started evolving it and writing it more regularly. But it was the feedback that came back that did make that definitely helped. Definitely helped.
Wow! And your second book?
So my second book it's come about. I enjoyed the process of writing more than I thought I would. So I've kind of carried on with a bit of a blog that is just the odd story from time to time. I put under beautiful skies because we live in Suffolk. It's the place where there are beautiful skies. Yeah. And I've enjoyed that. And we run this health club in Shrewsbury that has indoor tennis. It's a big part of what they offer. Obviously, that's something I really enjoy. And we have a tournament that attracts professional players from all over Europe that we run. We run twice a year.
Any names you can throw out?
Well, we've just
who are you pally with? Come on,
just had
drop some names.
Our first. Our strapline is that we promote it in Shrewsbury to get people to come along. Is that you could be watching a future Wimbledon champion because these are players that are up and coming, and will then will end up in the top 10. And people always used to tease and go, but you've never actually had anybody that's played at Shrewsbury that's been a Wimbledon champion. Well, certainly not Wimbledon singles champion. Well, we have now because Angelique Kerber played at Shrewsbury in 2012,
cool.
This summer she became the women's Wimbledon champion.
Do you want to know something really terrible?
You didn't know that, did you?
No, I didn't even know Wimbledon happened. I was like, I'm sure they cancelled that because of the World Cup. It was all football. It was all football this summer.
Not in my house, it wasn't.
No.
We had it split 50-50.
Really?
We had the football and then the tennis, yeah. But anyway, so the idea for the book has come out of meeting some of those players and understanding their stories and trying to write those stories down, because we also have a guy there that takes this amazing photography. So we wanted to kind of show off his photography, and then I could take his photography of some of the key players and then tell their stories. So that's what we're working up at the moment is what lessons can we learn from these players and how they perform, because life as a professional tennis player, unless you're in the top 100, is tough. So you talked about football. Football's a really good analogy. So there's each Premiership squad has 25 players. So there's 500 players playing in the Premiership. And they're not necessarily the top 500 in the world, but there's 500 players playing in the Premiership. The lowest paid player in the Premiership earns £10,000 a week.
A week?
A week. If you go into that's the lowest player. So that's the lowest paid. So if you go, so that's that's a huge amount of money, and you can live off that. Just about. If you go to tennis, and we would have players playing at Shrewsbury who regularly would be in the top 200 in the world, and if they win our event at Shrewsbury, they go home with a cheque of about £3,000. So that's for a week's work, out of which they've got to pay their coach, their accommodation, and their flights. And if you lose in the first round at Shrewsbury, you go home with 80 quid. So, the money in tennis is there, providing once you get into the top 100, you're in the Grand Slams. If you're in the Grand Slams, if you lose in the first round at a Grand Slam, you pick up £35,000. There's 4 Grand Slams a year. So get into the first round of the Grand Slams, you're doing okay. You've got some other tournaments that you'll play and you win. But get outside the top 100, and it's a real battle. And so when people are battling in that way, that's where I think some great stories come out about how to live out your life. So I'm going to try and tell those stories in an interesting way in my next book.
Well, all this talk of tennis has made me thirsty. I think I might go get some juice.
Now you see, that doesn't quite work because it's actually juice.
No, it doesn't work, does it?
And you've been working on that one ever since I started talking about tennis. I can see your mind working over.
Yeah, it's worried. Dave, thanks so much for your time. It's
been great
just
fun.
Listening to you, I'm just like, how has he had time to come and speak to us? So really, really appreciate it. And we've got a little book club on this Eden podcast. So, if you send us over a copy, you might be able to do a little book clubby
I'm all for self-promotion, so I promise you'll be one of the first ones to get it when the copy comes off the press.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your time. And if people you've got Twitter, you just tweeted me, didn't you?
Yeah.
What's your Twitter so people can stay in touch with you? So
I'm at Dave Courteen. My surname is spelt Courteen as though it was 14, but with a C instead of the F. So that's I'm at Dave Courteen. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook with the same.
Even your name is Tennessee.
Do you think?
Yeah, Court.
I always think it's very unusual that it rhymes with the A14. Dave Courteen. I spend half my life on it.
There you go.
There you go.
That's probably a curse, isn't it? Well, thanks so much for joining us. Alex, thanks so much for producing this episode. You've done an amazing, amazing job. I've been at Benjamin Lasky. To catch up with all the Eden Gathering stuff, you know where to go. It's edengathering.co.uk. And we will see you on the 6th of September at the Eden Gathering at the Mixed Stowmarket. But also, you know that we have food nights and social action that you can sign up to. Go on the website. Also, please subscribe to this website, however you're listening this podcast, however you're listening to this on iTunes or whatever. Just leave a little like rating and a little review. That will really help us out. And, well, I'll speak to you next week. Alex, play the music.